Alrighty, what's good, everybody? This is Mr. Composition, the MC that writes fiction, back at it with another interview here. We got ComiKen on the line with us today. How are you doing?
Doing all right, man. Thanks for having me on.
Heck yeah, man. So I wanted to get ComiKen on here because I'm all about independent creation. I'm an independent creator myself. And my big thing is being able to, work with different creators, being able to see different ideas, and also just showcase all the dope talent that's in here. So, well, us getting started here, I want ComiKen to go ahead and let us know who he is and when he got started as far as creating comics.
Known as ComiKen online, but everyone who knows me calls me Ken. And I've been drawing comics for about as long as I can remember. Really inspired by Scooby Doo starting out when I was a kid, and then when I got older, I was more into Naruto, the anime. When it premiered on Toonami, I was all in on that show. I actually missed the boat on Dragon Ball Z when it was coming out. Like, all the other kindergarten students were into Dragon Ball Z, but I was like, oh, that looks too violent. I can't watch that. And so when I got older and started getting into Naruto, I was like, it felt like I had hit a maturity point to like get into all that stuff, and I wanted to create stuff that was like that because it impacted my mind like so hard with just the raw energy of it when it came out on that show. So when I found out that Naruto started off as a manga first and then became a TV show or became an anime, I was like, okay, so I can make comics for a living, or I can do something like that to eventually get on TV or make an animation out of it. So that's what got me on the path to trying to make manga or trying to make comics for real, full time.
That's interesting because I came from the generation of the Dragon Ball Z because Dragon Ball Z was just one of those things where we didn't have like cable all the time. And so when it did come on, it was like, boom, we got it on Tanami. And it was like spamming the Tree of Life like every freaking weekend.
Oh yeah.
but, but I was just, they would also play it on like the Spanish channel. So like not a
Mm.
lot of people do that on Sunday around like 11 a.m. on like Telemundo or whatever. They would play Dragon Ball Z in Spanish and I would watch that joint on there.
Wow.
Like and it was, and plus we didn't have a computer in elementary, but we had the web TV, and so the web TV essentially allowed you to use your TV to get online, and so
Oh
we
wow.
had dial-up internet, and so I
Mm.
would remember just like typing in Dragon Ball Z clips, so it would be like Super Saiyan 2 Gohan Go takes versus Broly, and it'll take 30 minutes to load this 3-minute clip, and I'll just be so hyped just repeating that over and over.
Yeah, those buffering days.
Yes, we came a long way, but it's interesting as far as Naruto because I actually got into Naruto as an adult. So I
Mm.
started watching it probably I when I did start watching, I binged it, but I started watching it probably about 5 or so years ago, and about in a year I blew through it all. Now, I will say that I did 100% go through one of those websites that guided you through the filler, especially during the fourth Shinobi
Oh.
War. I was not about to do that. Madara literally put everybody in a freaking filler arc, and I was not about to deal with that.
Right.
But Naruto, so what would you say the top three moments in Naruto, whether in the manga or as far as in the anime, that you think really hit home for you, that like really touched you?
It's gonna be a couple moments in there that people won't really even think about. But the first one, obviously, is Naruto versus Sasuke, the first fight, where that fight was it was something else. When it came on TV the first time, it was you were so focused on what was happening on screen. Nothing else existed outside of what was happening there. Like your parents could be dying in the next room, and you're just like, I don't give a fuck. I'm watching Naruto beat the crap out of Sasuke right now, and I don't care about nothing else. It was so like built up throughout the entire series that when it finally went off, it was like, finally. And that was one of those moments that you really, I don't think you can get in anime these days, because you can just replay or rewatch episodes that you don't have to wait for it to come out on Toonami before you can see it. You just have to wait for it to come out on the internet, and you'll find somewhere it's playing, and you'll watch it. But this was special because if you missed it and everyone was talking about it at school the next day, you're just like, you're out of luck. You have to wait until the replay on TV happens, or somebody bootlegs it on YouTube or whatever. So that was the top special moment for me. The second one I would say was this part where Sakura was fighting off these three sound ninja versus, like, to protect Naruto and Sasuke, who were like passed out
That
in
was
the.
when she cut her hair.
Yeah, that was when she cut her hair.
Okay. Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like, okay, she's got like a legit moment here. Like, this is the first time I ever saw her do something for real, and she was holding her own. She was fighting off three people, so it was like, okay, cool, okay, she's got some skill, or she's able to at least hold them off for a bit of time. So I was like, that was one of the hardest moments, because she was just like, actually just using basic ninjutsu. She didn't really have any, like, she didn't have any special tail beasts or whatever. She doesn't have the special eyes or anything. She was just using like basic ninja skills to try to protect her friends. So I thought that was dope. And there's so many moments in the show that are so hype, but I mostly love the first half of Naruto, like the first bit before Shippuden, because it was so tightly woven and so well executed that everything in there is just like, man, just like hit after hit after hit. So the last moment I would say was Rock Lee versus Gara. When, yeah, when he dropped the weights.
yeah.
Yeah, that was the best moment, because that was the best moment because it was the start of something I'd never seen before, and then the animation was just so, it was unreal. It was
Yeah.
completely unreal. I'd never seen action animation like that in my life. Yeah, it was just something else. First part Naruto was special to me in a way nothing else could be.
No, I definitely agree. Those are some good ones. I think for me, my first one that gripped me as far as Naruto was when Team 7 and Kakashi went and they went against old dude with the face and the girl boy.
Oh, Zabuza and Haku.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That whole thing, especially when Naruto basically first used his talk no jutsu, that whole him breaking down this grown ass man. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Him breaking down this whole, and you see the level of storytelling. I was just like, because you're sitting there in this ninja world, you think that they're cold hearted, you think that they're all these different things, and you have this dude just like, yo, your man's just died. Are you really gonna just act like that he wasn't nothing and he's just all like, yo? And for him to be brought to tears, I was all like, even right now, it gets me like, I'm just all like, yo, that was super, that like that solidified it for me. And then
Right.
I would say the next one I loved the storytelling behind Sasuke and his brother. That whole thing, and then even after he killed him, to find out like, oh no, you don't know about your brother, and to
Right.
have Obito be the one to like break it down and tell him, and then to know later on how deep that whole conversation between Sasuke and Obito was, because technically they're the last living Uchihas, like,
Right.
so that whole moment was extra dope. And I would say my third favorite moment had to have been Neji's death, but also the part with Hanada slapping him and bringing him back to reality, because
Mhm.
what I like about Hanada is I don't think she gets enough credit. Like, people think it's just random that they got together, different things like that, but if you
Mhm.
actually paid attention throughout the series, Hanada was always Naruto's like back to reality, back to balance, back to what's important. you know, because she knew this is a person with overwhelming strength, and
Mhm.
not being able to come back to zero, you know, and focus in what's important despite what was going on, and even everything that happened in that war, because it was happening on his birthday. Like, I don't
Oh,
think
right, yeah.
people realize, like, you know, that was freaking on his birthday. But yeah, like all that stuff was going on his birthday. And so, like, those three moments, you know, because of the storytelling, the context behind it, and the payoff as
Mhm.
far as with everything, because even going back to Pakuzu and what's his face, those that stayed with Naruto and all of them throughout the rest of the series, even to have them show back up in the Fourth Shinobi War again
Mhm.
as, you know, reanimation. I was just all like, yo. Yuji Itadori is not a character, a lesson on
Oh, yeah.
character development. So explain to the people about that video and why you feel that way, and who would be that character that Yuji isn't.
I made that video because it was a feeling that I'd had for a very long time about basically all the characters in Jujutsu Kaisen. I was always wondering, okay, this is popular, everyone likes it, like everyone's like really into it. I'm like, okay, let me get into it. Let me watch the series just to see what people are talking about and why they're so into it. And I watched the whole 24 first season, 24 episode first season, and I was completely underwhelmed. I was like, man, this is not good. Like, what is everyone talking about? Like, why are they into it? And it it's called Jujutsu Kaisen, meaning like sorcery battle or sorcery fight, and it's mainly about the power system. It's not really like the characters aren't really deep. Like they're two-dimensional really. The only characters I really liked or had like more depth to them were like Nanami, Gojo, and Sukuna, and a little bit of Megumi too. Yeah, and even after watching season 2, which everyone like the Shibuya incident, which everyone thought said was like gonna be peak of the series, like amazing. I was like, okay, this is gonna be really good, and I watched that whole season, and the thing about it that was really really good was the animation. Animations were top tier, top notch. They drew their hearts out on the animations for season 2, but the story, like there still wasn't any definable qualities to Yuji that I could really get behind him as a character. I don't know what his goals are in life. I don't know what he's trying to aspire to be, or go for. Like with Naruto, you know exactly what he wants. You know exactly how he's trying to get it. He's like a goofy little kid who grew up lonely, and there's so much pathos to his story, and you want to see him succeed. He's the underdog, even though he's got like a foxtail spirit and all that stuff. But he's so low on the totem pole. How is he gonna rise to the level of Hokage in his story? But then you see Yuji, he's got no goal. I don't know what he wants. I don't know how he's trying to get it. He's good. He's got hands. Like he can
Right.
fight. He can beat everybody. But it's so what? Like even though and people say that Sukuna being inside of him doesn't help him out in any way, and I agree with that point. But at the same time, it's like even if he gets damaged to the point of like losing a limb or dying or whatever, Sukuna is still a benefit to him because it instantly heals everything
Yeah.
that's wrong with him. The only thing that it messes with is his mental state,
Yeah.
and Yuji can just like power through that most of the time. So it's just like he doesn't have the same depth that Naruto has, or even one of the side characters of Naruto has. Like there was so much more depth and pathos to, let's say, Rock Lee's character in that single battle between him and Gaara than there is for the entirety of Yuji's character. I just don't know who the guy is, and that's why I was so passionate about that that video that I did. And I pissed
It's
off like the
true.
JJK community with it.
But it's honestly, JJK I think is unique because I think that Gege Akatami is actually a troll. Like I
Oh, really?
honestly at this point, because I know exactly what you mean, because at times throughout a good chunk of it, I'm just all like, okay, I get that Yuji is the whole thing with Sukuna, like basically
Uh-huh.
like in a nutshell, you know, but it's still like there's a lot of things, directions that I think that he originally wanted to go to,
Mhm.
and he or she, I don't know if they knew whether or what the author
Right.
was, but I think that there was a lot of ideas initially that they wanted to explore,
Mhm.
and within that they use the story as the main character versus like the actual, it's more so like the main character is a mirror, or like a almost like the what he's supposed to be, like a host for the actual narrative storyteller versus like
Mm.
him being the actual main character. It's like the, like, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like it's something weird because I've never seen this type of storyteller with a quote unquote main character before. And the fact that they
Right.
had two main characters, they had Yuta in Jujutsu Kaisen Zero,
Right.
or the Jujutsu Technical School, because it's named something different for Yuta's thing. And
Huh?
then we have as far as this, which, so that's why I'm just like, I think that the main character may be the story, like in a weird way, the story.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it, and I've even actually thought that the quote unquote main character or the focus of the story is more the power system, because they explain new facets of it every episode, and it gets more and more complex to the point where I can't even keep up with it in my head. But at the same time, it's like JJK is I think the reason it's the way it is because the maybe the editors for Gege Akutami was like, just focus on your strengths, focus on what you're good at. Don't, like, if your characters aren't that great, don't worry about that. Just focus on what you're good at, and that's what people really get into the series for. They like the fights. They like how complicated the power system is. They like trying to understand like who's gonna win this fight between Gojo and Sukuna and all that. They like
Yeah.
trying to figure out the stats between different characters. And so they just tell Gege to focus on his strengths.
We're back, everybody, and we are on here with ComiKen again, the creator of Air Writer, which is out on Kickstarter. So I'll make sure to have a link for that. But let's talk about Air Writer. So Air Writer, you know, is based upon the child of a school shooter. That concept, I was just all like, okay, that's dope. But I was reading chapter 1 and Zero, the prequel. So tell us about this story and what inspired you to do
I
this.
started this story back when I was 17, and I just came up with the most, I guess, the edgiest thing I could think of at the time. I was thinking of like, okay, what if, like, I just saw a school shooting on TV or whatever, and I was like, okay, what if a school shooter had a child? And I was like, okay, well, how would that even occur? How would that even happen? Because usually school shooters, like, like finish themselves off after that's all done. So how would that even be possible? And like the story itself just kind of created itself around these questions that I kept asking myself over years. And by the time I got to the Kubert school, like maybe 10, no, not 10 years, like 5 years later, I was like, I need a story to start off like my career, or to try and build something on. So I basically dug up Air Rider from my files and was like, okay, let me bring this to life and create this as my first comic.
When I was looking at like the first, so at issue 1, so it's what I like about the fact is, so you have these powers, you know, the supers and everything that's in it. And I was all like, okay, so for one, the introduction and the navigation of the main character, because when he was first introduced, I thought like he was just like a bully, or, you know, so like it subverts your expectations because he's not the typical main character. It would be like almost the villain type of thing. But it almost seems like that's more of an exterior based around circumstances, because his interactions, especially with the black girl, you can see that he cares. So I thought that that was interesting, and then I was like, okay, is he doing the big, like the group of three, where it's like him, the black girl, and the nerdy, white dude? I was just like, is that gonna be like the trio right there? And then I was just all like, okay, did he just hit that the black girl may get some powers, because when old dude like came through and he was pulling on her and he was all like, yo, you're stronger than you look, and I was just all like, so I was like, there's a lot that was going, that got my mind rolling on the first
Right.
chapter. And so what is your thoughts on the pacing? So do you think, like, how long do you think that this particular series is gonna go, and what is your thoughts on pacing it, like a good pace on making comic books?
I really like the pacing that is used in manga, but it tends to elongate itself. It'll tell like really decompressed chapters, meaning like if you have a single moment like of a character walking, sometimes that can be 4 panels on one page of just the character walking, and then the second page will be more of the same. Really, you can show that in just one panel and then have the story continue with multiple other panels that contain like things and elements that move the story forward. But because of the nature of a weekly series like Naruto, panels like that help save time, or like help buy time for you to think of something else in the story that you can make happen. But I don't plan for this current series in its current iteration to be very long. I want to use it as basically a stepping stone to create a better version of Air Rider in the future. So for now, I'm just gonna keep going with it for as long as this first story arc goes, and we'll see where it goes from there. I don't want to say too much about what I'm working on, but I want to just kind of keep that in the dark for now.
That is such a smart move. Like, that's one thing that I always use the creator of One Piece as an example, because I think creators don't realize that you can not just redo it, but it can come back later with a new set of tools or set of things that you can do with it. So I'm always like, oh yeah, I'm gonna put it out in this iteration. And just like in One Piece, he literally to this day still releases chapters on his website, and then it's adapted. Like, someone just liked it, even though the drawing, everything, the story was so cool and concise, that somebody was like, you know what, I'll do the art, like, and we'll turn this into a manga. And so I always thought One Punch Man was unique in
Right.
that particular way. But I think that that's a genius idea, using that to be able to catapult the other stuff. With that particular format of doing things, what is your thoughts on AI? So for me, I'm not an illustrator. I'm all about the storytelling aspects, but I have released comic books because I went to school for graphic design, and so I manipulate, images or different things, or I'll use, like in Canva, default or stock things, and just create a whole story around that and things like that. But with AI being able to create consistent characters, this goes back to what I was saying with the whole I will, like, for me, I use AI as that initial thing to get the ideas and everything out for my story. And basically I want to do that same thing with One Punch Man, to where I have these one shots out that's done with AI. And then if someone likes the story, then I can work with them to be able to work, for it to be an actual thing. So what is your
Right.
thoughts on AI, and have you personally used it in any of your, creations or brainstorming?
My thoughts on AI. I've never used it for art yet. I think what's his name? White Manga. He had a really good take on the use of AI, where he said that you can just it like people were like everyone says like, oh, AI is stealing from the artists and all that, but then White Manga was saying you can steal from the AI itself and take the ideas that the AI is spitting out and then refine those and turn them into your own ideas. So I always thought that was a really great take on that. Me personally, with AI, I don't want to use it to, like, I'm not against it 100%, but I don't want to use it in any part of my art process right now because I want to develop my mind as much as possible and my own storytelling abilities before I make any use of AI at all. Like, if I find a way to incorporate it into my workflow in a way that doesn't take away any of the creativity that I'm using in, like, to create the pages and whatnot, then I would find a way to use it in the most ethical way. But right now it's like I just don't see any part of it or any place for it in my current workflow. The only thing I see is a lot of very negative audience interaction with anyone who uses AI. I tweeted one time on Twitter one time, like, that at some point in the future, everyone who is so hard against AI is going to be too ashamed to admit that they're using it currently to save time. At one point, let's say like Photoshop and photographs were you like people were thinking like, oh, you're not supposed to use that or else you're not an actual artist. Like
Or
if you use
digital
photo,
art in general.
right? Yeah, it was really like looked down upon when it first came out. Like using tablets was taboo, and like anyone who uses a tablet, like, you're lame, you're not a real artist, all that stuff. But then over time, once it became fully integrated into the art community, like people like started to accept it more and use it for their purposes and whatnot. And then there wasn't the element of Twitter where you can just post your random thoughts like back then. There was like forums and stuff, but it wasn't like as widespread as Twitter is. So
Yeah.
everyone who was railing against it was probably just railing against it in real life and changed their minds over time. And there's no record of their anger online as much as it is now. Um, but with AI, what I've used it for personally was just ChatGPT. I used it to modify a summary that I wrote for Air Writer. So I wrote Air Writer, and I was like, ChatGPT, jazz it up, make it make it better or whatever. And I wanted to see like what kind of result it came out with, and I was just like, yeah, that's dope. I'm gonna use that, and I just used what it came up with, improve my words and whatnot. So yeah, that's the only use I've had for it. So
for me, like AI, so that's one of the main things is for me, I think AI as creators, I think it's so easy for us to get overwhelmed and overstimulated by, as far as like a lot of things just need to be done, as far as like I need to get this panel done or I need to get this song done or different things like that. And so there's a lot of bandwidth. And so I think for me, what I've been able to use AI for is to cut through that like 90% block bandwidth that would be right there and to just get to the actual thing. Because it's just like I use ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT so much. I paid for I paid for this the plus because I use it for so many different things. Because as a musician, I fed ChatGPT all of my lyrics for my recent album, and I told it to analyze it and tell me the themes and everything about it, and it broke it down something serious, you know. And then with the ChatGPT Plus, it has the consistent character GPT. And so what for me, since I'm not I'm like, if I was an illustrator, this is what I would do, because you can upload an image. So for example, say you got a couple of like pictures of Air Writer, you upload that and you train it to your art style, and then say I need Art Writer in this particular type of thing and then it'll start giving you variations of it in your art style, or you give it depictions and different things like that. So for me, that's what I use AI for, because I'm just all like, it allows for a lot of the mental friction. So I know what you mean as far as that art style. So for me, and for me, I don't use it to write songs, and I don't use it to write stories, because that's my thing, like you said, like with the art
Right.
you're developing as far as how. So for me, that's how I've been. Like, I don't use it for that, because I'm just all like, that's what I've been developing all my life. So
Right.
but for to use it in combination, I'm just all like, okay, this is cool, because like I said, I'm not an illustrator, but I've always liked manga and comics and just stories in general. So and plus I just go through different things. So I will make a bunch of albums, and then I'll be like, oh, I got this story idea, then this. So for me, it helps with being able to complete idea, like get in the habit of completion, so that way I can just have these in the storage in the bank, and that way if I want to pull something, from the past, and then just be like, hey, because I made a 11 issue cannabis manga, called like the most random manga ever. I put it in like where's the so this is what I mean by like a certain art style. So this is super simple, but it's just me being goofy and like adding it and doing different things. But I did this whole book in Canva, but and then the other one is just like I used, it's like it's 11-bit castle, and so it's about a bunch of rejected video game characters who are competing to get a video game for them to be a main character of a video game, basically.
Right.
And it was like a bunch of pixel, what you would call this. But for me, that's my unique way of making like comics. Cause I'm just all like, well, I can't, I'm not, that's not the medium that I wanted to put my energy into, so I was just all like, okay, I'm gonna do that in storytelling. But I do have like fun with digital creation, so I love taking elements, combining it, and making it into something new. And so I think like AI is definitely going to, I don't like the negative aspect that people preach of AI, you know what I mean? It's not to be delusional, because there are some super like jacked up things that people are, but that's gonna come with everything in order to get the wide scope of what's and what can happen as far as with it. But yeah, I think that AI, we're like barely still in the beginning stages.
Right. Yeah, and the thing that you mentioned about like the mental bandwidth and whatnot, and how it's like very difficult and all that to try to create stuff when you're spread so thin and whatnot. That's the kind of mental battle that I enjoy. Like, I like having to figure out how an image works and how to like deconstruct it using like my own processor in my head. And as much as possible, I want to keep like AI out of my process for as many years as I can, so I can figure out how to express myself naturally on my own. And if I need maybe like some reference, or like a photo reference or something, maybe I'll use AI. But even then, I want to use photos from real life and all that to get what I need, and even like photo bash things if need be. But then on the other side of it, it would help save a lot of time in the creation process. But then at the same time, I'm afraid of I wouldn't say afraid, but I would say like the outcome of everyone at the same time trying to take all these like shortcuts or time saving methods to make like mass produced work that comes out faster, but is of the same quality as what everyone else is producing. I never want to feed my stuff into a processor or an AI processor just to see like what it comes up with. I want to keep that like as much of that to myself as possible, so I can see what I come up with naturally. Because that's the part that I enjoy about creating things. Like I see that kind of mass production effect with a lot of webtoons, where
Yeah.
webtoon like everyone uses like the same 3D assets, and it's the same with anime now these days. Like they use the same
Yeah.
assets or share them between like studios, to where every like if you see a fantasy show, every single fantasy show has this town with orange roofs. Like the rooftops are all orange. You've seen it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like they all look like that. And then if you look at other anime, the cities all look the same. They're all like vertical 90-degree, like they all look the same. So it's like these shortcuts that help save time. And no doubt they probably started finding ways to use AI in the anime industry to save time as well. But a lot of the artistry is taken out
Mm,
when people take shortcuts like that. And I feel like that's a large reason why people love like 90s anime and
yeah.
early 2000s or 80s anime, because it's just drawings on paper and then paintings on cells. And
Mm,
there's so much like craft in what they're doing, that even the shift to digital was kind of a devastating blow to the industry, because they felt like, at least I'm assuming, they felt like some of that craft or a lot of that craft was lost because of the shift to digital, and they had this unlimited palette of infinite colors that they could use because of that digital shift.
yeah.
That it wasn't just those limited cell colors, and that took out part of the craft. So I don't know. With this shift to AI, I think that craft is going to be more and more appreciated by other artists, and then consumers at some point. Consumers are going. They don't give a fuck about the use
Yeah.
of AI or anything. They don't care. Like as long as it comes out, cool. Like they don't care
Right?
what it.
Is it dope? Like
Yeah, exactly. Like they don't care how it was made. They just want to see it or see the final product. But me and my artist mind will always like think about that stuff, and I'm like, I have to make it with my hands.
Yeah, I totally feel you on that, and yeah, that's how my whole thing with like physically writing and it's
Mhm.
storytelling in general. I'm just like, yeah, that's where I won't toe the line with there, But I got a few more questions for you. So
Yeah.
this question here is, you made a video in regards of indie comics afraid of honest criticism. Now, it's interesting because, I see a lot of, for one, just indie creators. Like, and it's not even just comic books. Like, I see it in, the hip hop world as far as rappers, musicians, painters. But in specifically as far as in the comic world, it is a very interesting thing because I've seen it in regards to when people critique Eric July or with
Hmm.
other people. So, what do you think that is as far as within the indie comic community?
Meaning like, what do I think? Like, is the fear around honest criticism or
Honest criticism, yeah.
right? The barrier to entry for like indie comics is zero.
Yeah.
Anyone can do it. Anyone can come in and put their comic on the scene, put it online or sell it, and see how it fares in the actual like marketplace. And a lot of people aren't willing to make the changes necessary to, like, if you're doing it for fun, that's one thing. You're doing it for fun. You're not trying to sell a product. You're just having a good time. You don't need to be. It doesn't need to be good or get likes. The problems come in when people start complaining like, "Oh, my stuff is not getting likes on social media. Why is it not? Why isn't it resonating with people?" It's because it's not good. That's the main thing. It's not good, and it's not sellable. So people aren't going to like your stuff. If you did it for fun and you didn't care about the outcome of it, then that's fine. But when you're starting to complain like, "Oh, I'm not making money from this. I wish I made money." Learn how to sell your book, or change the name of your book so that it can be instantly recognizable for what it is. Because my comic used to be called Just Air Rider, but nobody told me they didn't know what it really meant. They just kind of assumed from the cover, and then they would read it and it'd be like, oh, okay, that's he's like some kind of hero guy in a high school or whatever. I had to add high school hero to the title so that it would be instantly recognizable to people. Like they would understand, oh, this is what Air Rider is. He's a high school hero, and that's it. Like they understand what it is. But that was just an effort to make it more like that was 1% effort to like make it more sellable to people, to make people understand what it is. And then working on my art style, trying to make it more appealing, make it more interesting to myself to create and to draw. All of these go into making my work as interesting to people to sell. And even with the effort I put in now, I know it's not that good. Like I know it's not the best thing ever. I know it's not on the level of Naruto. It's only just good enough. So I found a partner to actually like tell me this isn't up to par, and we work together now to try to make Air Rider better, or try to figure out different like story beats, story points, and all that stuff to actually make it into something that can stand next to Naruto or One Piece, even working in the indie comic scene. And like most people in the indie comic scene, because the barrier to entry is zero, the barrier now becomes their own feelings and thoughts and emotions. Like, can you get over your own
Ego.
self-consciousness? Yeah, can you get over your own ego to make the changes necessary to your book to make it better, to for people to actually like it? Some people, a lot of people will like pretend like, oh, there's nothing really wrong with my book. It's just it's not ready for the marketplace, or the marketplace isn't ready for my book yet. Everyone else needs to change, but my book just needs to remain the same. And there isn't a real place to criticize an indie book. It's not held to any kind of standard. Like professional comic books, like Image Comics, are held to a professional standard. So anyone can say anything about, oh, Invincible was this or that. Like they can say anything bad that they want about it because it's held to a professional standard. But indie comics don't have that standard. And then there's no place to actually put out your actual thoughts on the indie books that are coming out. If you give unsolicited advice or unsolicited criticism, then you're met with like anger and vitriol. Like if I was given unsolicited criticism on Air Rider, I'd be like, oh, you know, but it's like I would actually have to look at it. Is this person saying something that is actually real about the story? But even then, almost nobody offers that kind of criticism, and there's no space to give people that kind of criticism. And I feel like that's what's holding indie comics back, because there isn't that improvement mechanism built in.
I think, man, so I think that's 100% right. I think that and there's people who've created their own, magazine that has, other independent works and stuff like that. And I think that we're at a point where it's kind of like the wild, wild west. Like everything's kind of up for grabs. So if you have an idea, being able to like put, because I've thought about plenty of times of just like, okay, what would an American version of Shonen Jump be, where you have people vote, and then you have a certain set of like people in the professional like comic book, whatchamacallit, to go through and look through these things, and that way everything that because you're right, like there is no particular like quote unquote standard for
Right.
indie, because someone can create something that's goofy and it ends up going off, and
Oh
then
yeah.
it's just all like, well, but what people don't understand is there is a legit way of doing things systematically to where you find success, and then there's those one-off, once in a blue moon things. It's like the probability of going about it in this way in the system, and improving and everything like that, the possibility of you finding success, especially with understanding marketing, brand, and everything like that, is very high versus the all right, YOLO, I'm just gonna just do this. And like you said, the market's gotta, change for this instead of you changing
Right.
for the market type of thing. I think it's just more so finding or having more successes. So I think like you were mentioning Manga White, I look at Eric July. There's another person that I started following. He did this one Just Goblin or something like that, but I see him
Oh,
posting a lot of
Brandon
his.
Chen.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, I think having definitely some stuff like that. And like I said, when looking at Air Rider, and you're right, like, okay, so that adding the high school hero, it's just all like it is simple things like that that's just all like, because what's interesting is you might have like maybe heard or thought because of other critiques that, oh, I should make it shorter, because if it's shorter, then it'll be more marketable versus, okay, well, there's like the title and then there's like the subtitle, and it
Right.
all kind of goes together into where, oh, okay, so now I'm understanding before even reading the story that, okay, Air Rider, the high school hero, boom, going into that. And then when you're going into the book, you're just like, okay, you see about the powers, you see like, okay, cool, everything's like building up to it. And so me personally, like, I was looking through it and I definitely got vibes of just like, there's the Teen Titan vibe, but there was also kind of like the vibe of, because I don't know if you went to like the Scholastic book fairs and everything like that.
Oh yeah,
but
as a kid, yeah.
There was the Captain Underpants. And
Oh
so
really?
that particular art style, it reminded me as far as like a more mature version of it with more texture. But that because it's just instantly, even though that was in elementary school, I never read the book since then or whatever. But that art style, even almost like 30 years later, I can remember because of that. So that it has a memorable art style that Air Rider's given me. So that's dope. That's freaking dope.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, I was really trying to channel some of those like older cartoons from like the early 2000s and the 90s and whatnot. And yeah, I put all of that in Air Rider.
Yeah, no, I could definitely like getting the code name Kids Next Door.
Oh yeah.
Freaking yeah, stuff like that. Oh man, but for independent comic book creators, what three main points of advice would you have for independent comic book creators?
Okay, so start off with your book doesn't have to be marketable to everybody. That's the main thing that you can do to sidestep all this like quality stuff. Like, you don't have to be the best written thing in the world, as long as your work caters to a specific subset of a subset of a subset of a group. Like, you're the only one that's catering to that group, so they'll automatically go to your work, because you just have to find where they're at and be like, hey, here's my comic, here's what I'm making. Because your thing is the only thing like it in the world, you're gonna win automatically. So it doesn't have to be the best written if you're the only one doing it. So you want to find a niche of one. You want to be the only one doing what you're doing, because then you don't have to compete with everybody else in the world. And the thing is, I saw on Tapas, when you search up the romance genre on Tapas and scroll through, there's thousands of the same exact comic, just reskinned, like changed just slightly in every comic that you see. It's very hard to find anyone that stands out from the other, because they're all this shiny anime aesthetic about a girl going to another world and being in high society and fantasy, and it's all the same thing. If you scroll through, it's ridiculous. Instead of competing with thousands of comics that are all trying to be the same thing, you just become what you are specifically. You want to still tell decent stories. That's the one thing that even if you are competing, that's the one thing that will actually level the playing field, even if you can't draw that well. If you can tell a riveting story, a story that can like really pull somebody along, or have a premise that'll grab somebody in, like the son of a school shooter, like
Yeah.
if you can grab somebody's attention with the premise and then carry them along through with a really good story, then not only are you the only one doing what you're doing at such a high level that other people just can't compete, even if they try to muscle in on your territory. And that's one thing I really focus heavily on. Like, I'm reading this book called Story Grid. It's this way
Ooh.
to edit your own writing
Mm-hmm.
to actually make it on a higher standard. And I read this other book called let me see, yeah, called Dramatica. It's the other
Mm.
book that really helps focus on like story structure, story theory, so that you can make your books to just a quality that, like, just using what I've learned in those two books, I can theoretically make something on the level of Naruto. Like, I
That's dope.
figured out what kind of techniques that are being used to create the level of suspense and the themes and balancing all that out to make it very high quality. I've used Dramatica itself to understand the Chimera Ant arc in Hunter x Hunter,
Mm.
and why
That's
that,
dope.
yeah, why that story was so hard hitting, why people resonated with that story so much. It was actually two stories in one arc, but that's like, that's deep, like, theory aspect of it. But yeah, I read a lot about how to write, and I don't try to wing it, and that's what allows me the ability to create air writer on at least a level that I can be satisfied with. The first chapter came out like 3 years ago. I finished writing it like 4 years ago. So now I'm much more experienced in terms of writing and understanding stories, so I can write better stories now. No, that's what I'll be working on from this point. But that's number two you can do in terms of creating indie comics on a level of quality. And number three is really just to see what is already out there, analyze it, and then see where your work fits in. If you're drawing or writing in the superhero genre, you want to look at what other superhero comics are coming out and see what techniques and things are they using. Like, how are they actually doing what they're doing and pulling it off to such a degree where it becomes like famous or interesting to a large market. Because a lot of this stuff is completely invisible. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't analyze it, it'll just look like, oh, this is a cool, like, violent, like, superhero story or whatever, like Invincible. Like,
Yeah.
it'll just be like, you'll only see the surface, but you have to understand what's happening underneath the surface to make it all work. If you don't understand all that, then it'll be very difficult for you to replicate what they're doing and make it work for yourself.
Those that especially the last one for sure. For one, I'm definitely gonna be getting those. But there's a couple of storytelling books that I have. But like for me, I've been like reading and storytelling for like so long, and that's what I like about books like that
Mhm.
is having that extra layer of DIY mixed in with. That's what I like about school. Like for me, I would go to school for very specific things because for one, they usually teach me terminology on
Mhm.
certain things that I can then go and research, but then it kind of brings everything together, you know. So I'm definitely
Right.
going to be checking out those two books because that sounds fire. And yeah, that's high research, you know. Like there's
Right.
looking at those particular things like a demon slayer or
Huh.
things like I always look at that even with Pokemon. Like I always thought
Yeah.
Pokemon was one of the most fascinating marketing and branding like things, and what a lot of people don't know is it started as an indie comic. Like
Oh yeah.
they self-published it originally, Pokemon, you know, like.
I
And
didn't even
so
know that.
yeah, like that. Man, I be going through Pokefacts like crazy. Like I be going,
Wow.
but you know, so yeah, and I think that definitely doing that research is really, really dope. So,
There
uh,
was something.
yeah,
I just wanted to say something on that note of quality is like, even in the mainstream comic industry, they don't have editors like they do in Japan. meaning like
Mm.
the editors in Japan, they focus on the story quality. They're like a developmental editor for your whole series. But in comics in America, the editors are just there to maintain like continuity with like mainstream superheroes. And then
Yeah.
with your own story, it's for like grammatical errors or storytelling stuff, but it's not really the nitty gritty of writing like with story grid or with dramatica. Like this stuff is stuff you do on your own to make your own story good. The editors in America are only focused on making your stuff principal quality, and they're not really focused on diving deep into the quality of the story. You have to do all that on your own, whether you're indie or a professional in the mainstream industry.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. Like, and that was one of the things when I released my first book, not a comic book, but my first book was an actual novel. And before releasing it, I would go through trying to see like, all right, if I go through a publisher. But for me, I was always the person that's just all like, the only thing that's not gonna allow this to come out is me. Like, like
Right.
I will find a way, and that's what's so dope. I think about being indie, but I think that, like you said, that's one thing that independent artists do have to find is that yeah, you can find success, or you can find your audience. That's another thing, is that I think defining your version of success and finding examples of it, but also doing the research because, like you said, there's a lot of things that are invisible to the general public that they don't realize goes on. And like I noticed instantly, like when I was reading the credits of Air Writer, I was just all like, okay, it says as far as like written story and art, by you, but then there was other
Mhm.
people as well,
Yeah.
that helps, get everything the way it is. So I think
Yeah.
figuring out a team, I think would be, dope as well. And I know with a lot of independent artists, they think, oh, I gotta, get paid. It's just like, honestly, sometimes just looking around, sometimes it may be a subscriber, sometimes it may be like a relative, whatever, but it's
Mhm.
somebody to help with that overload that
Right.
happens, so that way, and you can get fresh eyes on it as well. But like I said,
Yeah.
I definitely need to check out those two books for sure. Last question before we head out here. So with all of the craze that we got, Invincible season 2,
Mhm.
Ninja Kawaii new one out, solo level,
Yeah.
all this stuff. So, what is on Comic Kid's current radar as far as either the manga, the anime world, or comic, or just any fictional piece of work that's got your attention right now that you're deep in?
I'm checking out. So the recent free rent, Journey's
Okay.
End. That one just came to an end, but that one was really good the whole way through. Then I'm watching Delicious in Dungeon. That one
I've
is
heard that one.
yeah. Studio Trigger I think is working on that one for Netflix. So I'm watching that, and then I'm watching Solo Leveling. So
Yeah.
anytime that comes out, I'm watching that. I know it was a manhwa first, like a Korean webtoon.
Yeah.
I heard the art on that is like no, I've seen the art on it and it's really good. I think it's even better than what they got coming out in the anime. I actually want to
That's
read.
interesting.
Yeah, I want to read some of those chapters just to see what they got. But yeah, that's what's on my radar right now. I'm waiting on what's it called, Blue Lock season 2 to come out. And
Hmm.
then I just saw an announcement for Konosuba season 4 coming out. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh man, yeah. I just finished watching episode 11 of Solo Leveling, and I read the first chapter, and I found out that there's like a copycat type of story that's similar to Solo Level from there, where he is able to clone himself, and it's a Korea manga as well. But instead of him having this system that he levels up, he has this system that clones itself, and each of the clones has like, imagine taking the different skills from Solo Leveling and applying them to clones. That's basically what it is. And I was all like, oh, that's so. Is this gonna end up being like the new isekai almost? Because I don't know if you've checked the web novel app out, but there's like a lot of quote unquote system like manhwas and mangas and web novels that are on there where it's like My Dragon System or da 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 da. So I'm all like, is
that's exactly what I was talking about with the whole romance thing on Tapas. It's the same thing with Solo Leveling. Like once they saw a formula that works, they're just like, let's spam it 100. like there's so many copies of Solo Leveling, or like of things that are like Solo Leveling but not it exactly, like that put their own little spin on it. It's just like the isekai effect in
No, I definitely, it's interesting because for me, I'm just like, people think and do stuff like that. That dungeon one that you were talking about, my sister was telling me about that, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting concept. Like, you know, like I was like, I love interesting concepts. So like Dr. Stone, interesting concept. Like the fact that, you know, and then the way it just, I was like, okay, cool, you know. But yeah, you know, really that's cool. Super. But yeah, man, let everybody know where they can find you and everything like that, and we'll get out of here.
Nope. Yeah, everyone can find me on X or Twitter at the ComiKen. You can also find me on Instagram at ComiKen. And then I have my Kickstarter for Air Rider High School Hero running right now. The link, I'll give the link to my buddy here, and he'll put it in the description and all that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I got 6 more days left on the Kickstarter, so get in while y'all can.
Okay, dope. Yeah, I'll put this on my community tab on YouTube so people can check that out. I'll have this interview out this week, but I'll have that Kickstarter, you know, out there today so people can be able to get that before the whatchamacallit ends. But yeah, ComiKen, thank you for being a part of the Mr. Composition little indie podcast here. It goes through so many different names, but thank you for coming on, man.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.